Welcome to the Art of Lifting podcast. Today we have got the World's preview shows. We're going to split it into two. We're going to start with the men's and then we'll go into the women's after in the next episode. Don't know if you guys want to just briefly introduce yourselves just so everyone knows who's on, but I mean, you've both been on before for previews.
Yeah, my name's Manny. I've been on the preview shows before on the Sheffield previews for both the men and the women's. Yeah, there's not really much more to say, really. I'm a 120 kilo powerlifter, kind of mid, only have one good lift, kind of broken, old man. Yeah, that's all there is to me.
I'm Charlie, and whatever Manny's just said, pretty much the same for me. I've only got a deadlift. I think that's basically our common trait.
Yeah.
Right. Starting with the men's 59 class. So previously in this class, Oscar has been the heavy favourite. He's been chasing, is it Sergey's record? Can't remember his name.
Sergey Fedosienko.
Yeah, he's been chasing that record for a while. He's definitely getting closer, but he has, as of a couple of weeks ago, had to withdraw from Worlds because I think it was a back injury, which does kind of open things up for the class, apart from the fact that Kasim Sand, who it was the 66 world champion last year, is moving down to the 59s. So I think going in, the story was going to be, will he maintain enough strength to still beat Oscar, or will it be pretty close? Oscar also has a big deadlift. He's got the deadlift world record in that class, I believe. But Kasim Sand, as a 66, also has a huge deadlift. Now, something interesting with this class is going to be how they split it up. And how they split up the 12 lifters will determine kind of how it goes. I would assume it's going to just be one flight if there's only 12 of them, because Kasim Sand is going in with like a default total of 75 because he's not yet competed as a 59. But I was listening to him on King of the Lifts the other day, and he did say that as a 66, he didn't feel the weight class. His walk-in weight was about 63 kilos, and that was with kind of eating what he wants. He said he's a big foodie and like he'd have like a buffet once or twice a week and he still wouldn't fill the 66s. So the cut down in theory shouldn't be too hard for him. But we've got some really familiar names in this class as well. So we've got Antoine Garcia. He is currently nominated first with a 610 total. He is a French lifter. He's been in the 59s for years. He's hit 600 plus a few times now. His last two meets, he was in the 580, 590 range. But that was 1 for 3 on pulls in both of those meets. So I don't really know what happened in Euros in March. He only hit his opening pull of 230 and he missed a 240 deadlift on his second, and that's 15 below his best ever pull. So I don't really know what happened there. I don't know if he was battling with an injury there or if it just wasn't his day. But he is still looking like a heavy favourite, at least for podium. I don't know that he'll necessarily win with Kasim Sand. It also depends on obviously his weight cut. And then in second, we've got Ivan Campano Diaz from Spain, another very familiar name within the 59s, coming in with a 607.5 nominated total, which he hit at Euros, which is just back in March, so pretty recently. Both of those lifters, Antoine and Ivan, are both pretty close on total. So I think I'm putting Kasim Sand as a comfortable lead. Like he'd have to lose a lot of strength off his total to not still win this. But I think Antoine and Ivan is going to be a very, very close battle for second and third. I've also got a note on Kwaku as well from US Virgin Islands. So I'm not really familiar with him as a lifter. I had a little look on open powerlifting. He has been around since 2019. And I think something that's important within this weight class, because it is such a lightweight class, which I say in every single preview show, some lifters try and force themselves to stay this light for a long time. Other lifters are pretty comfortable there. So Kwaku is one I'm kind of interested to see what he does, because he did start powerlifting at 16 years old, and that was in 2019. And he's been a 59, I'm pretty sure, ever since day one. His total is steadily building from meet to meet. Like he looks like he's doing pretty well with progress, and he does seem pretty consistent. I think if Campano Diaz and Garcia push each other too much, there is a chance that he'll then end up on the podium as well. But obviously it will all depend on the day. There was also one other lifter in the class that I wanted to shout out, which was Dion Louis. He is nominated 10th, but he has an incredible deadlift. If you look at his nominated numbers, so he's nominated 10th with a 530 total, which is a 170 squat, 100 bench, and a 260 pull. And he's actually pulled 276 at a meet back in February. So I want to just shout him out for that, because I think he's a major contender for a deadlift medal there, potentially even deadlift gold. And that's just a crazy deadlift, especially when you look at the comparison with his other two lifts as well. But that's most of my notes for the men in the 59s.
After you.
Do you want to go or do you want me to go?
No, you can go first.
I think it'll be fascinating. I do think that Kassem Sand will win. Like with where he's coming down from, if we're looking at kind of like how Shell managed it, it's like Kassem could have a big drop off and still probably win it by a decent distance. Whether he beats Sergey's world record is a different question. Because, like, of course, as a 66, he's past it, but I do think in training he's got a bit of a tendency, especially on squats, to leave them a little bit high. But I know that since Sheffield, where kind of like his preps, he was always pulling with straps, I think that gave him this false illusion of like a very high top end on deadlifts, and it didn't necessarily transpire when it came to comp. And he has been training without them now, so he should come through on his bench and his deadlift, but I'm a bit concerned about his squat. And the only issue that I could see arising is maybe opening too heavy and running the risk of like getting depth calls from the refs. But he's looking strong. I don't know if he will be able to push Sergey's record, or even if he's just planning on holding it for Sheffield, but he should come first. And then, yeah, the only other discussion really to have is between Ivan and Antoine. Because I know that's been a back and forth at like last Worlds. The Euro's just gone as well. And I believe that Ivan has come out top both times, hasn't he? And yeah, I think he'll do the same again. He's looked really strong this prep. And I think where he's pulling after Antoine, he's looked really reliable in that position. And he should have second secured. And I don't think it will happen. But if anybody's going to pip Kassem Sand, it will be Ivan. But it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, I think I echo both of your thoughts there. Kassem Sand is pretty much very clear. I've seen that he's posted a 680 training total around 60 kilo body weight, but those were all very comfortable lift. I think that comprised of a 242.5 squat, 147.5 bench, and a 290 deadlift. And he has since done a 270 squat. The depth was a bit questionable, but the fact that he's squatting at that live of body weight is indicative of a very big total coming up. I think he benched 155 and also pulled 300 as well, and that was without straps. So that total was in the range of 680 to 717.5. The total, bear in mind, the total record of Sergey Fedosenko is 669.5, so he doesn't need to empty the tank to guarantee himself a spot at Sheffield or even break that world record. So he probably will just end up chipping that, saving himself for Sheffield, and yeah, securing the win pretty comfortably. I think as well, deadlift gold is securely his. But for second place overall, I'd put Ivan. His training is looking very good. He's put up about a 602.5 kilo total in training, but they were all very sub-max lifts. One thing to note and one thing to caveat is that his body weight was sitting around 64.3, so that will make a difference into how he performs at comp. But if you actually have a look at how sub-maximal these lifts are, we're talking like a 205 squat, which is like 7.5 off his comp max, but genuinely moved like a 6 or sub 6, a 140 bench, which moved at like 6.5, and then a 257.5 kilo dead, which moved at around 6.5 to 7. Like genuinely, they all flew. So I see him comfortably being second as long as he actually executes and nothing messes up too badly. And then Antoine in third. I don't know if Kwaku's made quite enough progress to close that gap from what I've seen. And then we also have, it's worth mentioning, and we have quite a small spread between I think it's first and fifth place, all the way down from what we've got nominated totals of 610 all the way down to 592.5. Yeah, so yeah, it's anyone's game after podium, I'd say.
Yeah, I think it's good that you pointed out as well how close that spread is, and the fact that like with Ivan it has quite a big weight cut he has to make at this point, because I think in a class of people this light, a lot of these guys they're still fairly young, but I think when you get to like the 20-21 age range and you're still having to cut to make 59, that's when I think people need to start looking at potentially moving up. And I think if you're walking around at 64 kilos and you've got to make 59, percentage wise, that is quite a big drop. And that's where I think people can maybe not retain as much strength as they think they would, open a bit too heavy, make silly mistakes like that. And then, yeah, anyone up to like Brian in fifth could end up placing themselves second, third. I have a question for you both about Kasim Hassan then. So obviously we've kind of said the total record is pretty much secure for him unless he loses like a lot of strength. Do we think he's going to get the squat record of, well, it's 240 currently?
Squat record, yeah, he'll get that.
I say no, he'll miss on depth. I think he'll get his opener, but I don't see him like carrying it through. I think it's going to be a bit of a ropey comp on squats, especially like when you're cutting. Like it does have a massive impact on your ability to just kind of like gauge where you are with depth. And with his training, he has been tending to squat higher and higher as he gets heavier and heavier. And just give me a thumbs up on the screen. He does have that tendency to squat higher and higher as it gets heavier. And I do think that'll be something that could catch up with him in comp. Why does it keep on doing that? I'm doing that, isn't it?
I think that's a really good point. I also think as well, like when Shell moved down for Sheffield, you know, one of the arguments in favour of Shell was, yeah, but he always had to cut for the 74s. He knows what a harsh cut can be like. Kasim Sand, he's made it fairly clear he's not had to cut. Like he eats into weigh-ins, he eats before he weighs in, he drinks like before he weighs in and everything. So gauging your top end, like you said, Charlie, after having to weight cut on squats, especially when, depending on when he weighs in the order as well, he might not have tons of time to recomp. It's very hard to gauge where you're at, and things do feel different when you've had to do that cut. And I think he said as well on his King of the Lifts podcast that he didn't do a trial cut either. So I think that could be an interesting thing to see how that plays out. I do back him for the record. I think he'd be silly to try and do much above that, especially because he doesn't really need it. Especially if he keeps his deadlift strength, like he won't need to really go for that. And then, yeah, my next question was, do you think he'll get the deadlift record, which is currently 275.5? I think Manny's vanished. So Charlie, what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, there are actually like a few different people that could shoot for it. As you said, Louis Dion, last Worlds, he kind of just came in, got his lifts on squat and bench, and then just kept on YOLOing it for the record. But I think like he could push it. I know that Brian Seong as well is a very big puller. Whether he's capable, maybe, I don't know. But Kasim Sand, if anybody, is going to be the person that walks away with it. But it depends. It really depends on how big his total is before that. Because it's at that point, is like pushing the deadlift record, is that eating into what you can do at Sheffield? So does he need it? Does he want to walk away with it? Or does he save it for another time? If he was in the position where he doesn't need to push a deadlift record, I don't think he would.
Yeah, Manny, do you think he's going to go for the deadlift record? I think Charlie's kind of made a fairly reasonable point there. It depends where his subtotal's at and what he needs to. I think he'll try and chip the world record total just to get the record in total in his name, save the rest of Sheffield. But
I mean, if we back calculate it, right, like if the total record is 669.5 and needs 670, let's say he benches around 150. That leaves him with what, about 520 on the on the rest, and then 240.5. Yeah, I don't think he needs it. He doesn't need to go crazy for it. I'm not sure actually. I think he'll load it. Just because why not? Why not?
Perfect. I think we're all in agreement there, then, of the at least first place going to Kasim Sand. Should we move on to the 66s? Charlie, do you want to take the lead on this one?
I've got to say, the 66ers all of a sudden have become like really unfamiliar because like Shell's come down and everybody else just left. Like Pana probably would have done it if Shell wasn't there, but now he's focused on World Games. The Japanese Kyoto's gone up to 74. Kasim Sand's gone down to the 66ers. So now it's like a really strange new class. And I think the big kind of like talking point is just like how well is Shell holding up? Because he will come first. I don't think he'll have it as secure as people think he does. So it's like his performance at Euros wasn't great. his training at the start of the peak, again, was quite poor. He posted some of it saying it's actually the worst peak he's having. And it's like, is that body weight drop starting to catch up with him? And is it starting to become a bit unsustainable, especially now that he used to be an 83? He had to cut into the 74s, even at Euros. And I don't think Avery Jackson will get that close to him, but I do think it will be closer than we think. And as well, just seeing how Avery Jackson performs on the world stage, because I think beating Jonathan Garcia at US now. So I remember I stayed up to watch that, and it was like 2 or 3 in the morning, and I thought it was an awful session until that happened, and it made it worth it. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with the top 2. But I've got to say, after that, I'm really not familiar with what's going on with the class, and I think they're the main kind of like areas to talk about with it.
Yeah, I'll just quickly jump in with some of the other names. My notes were pretty similar to yours for Shell and Avery, and I'm really excited to see that. And I agree with you. I think it will be closer than people expect. But I think Shell is someone that gets so fired up on meet day that he just finds that second gear, and I think he'll walk away with it. And he's got.
I mean, he'll just load up whatever he needs, and then
exactly what I was
that's
going to
it.
say.
And if his total was built in a different way,
I think we would be having a very different conversation, but he can just load up. And at Sheffield, he still had like a bit of room to push if he needed it. So, yeah, I don't think there's much of a battle there just because of deadlifters always coming out on top in those situations. But
yeah, I agree. I wonder if Avery's kind of mission will be to hit what he needs for Sheffield, which I think, this is from the memory, is it like 735-ish to be within 5%? Granted, I don't know if that'll guarantee him a spot, but that might be what he aims for, just to stay within the 5% of the world record. As
Yeah, 731.5. So yeah,
which is probably doable for him, to be fair. Like, he's looking strong. Yeah. I think, just to shout out some of the other names on the list, so we've got Santos from Mexico is nominated with 688, and then Satake from Japan nominated in 4th with 685.5. So the battle for 3rd will be pretty close. And like you said, Charlie, their names we're not particularly familiar with. Like, a lot of the big names just aren't either at Worlds this year, they're saving it for World Games, or they've just changed weight classes. I think Santos will come out in 3rd. He's my pick for 3rd, just because he's got the bigger nominated deadlift. But if Satake hits a big enough squat, I think it'll obviously just make the job to pull for 3rd a lot harder for Santos. It's also worth noting as well, so Satake, I apologise if I'm butchering names here, his nominated pull is 265, but he has hit 275 before, so I think the nominated total is also possibly not a true indication of his top end. It might just obviously depend on the day, and I wonder if maybe his deadlift didn't show up that day, as it sometimes does. So I think those two is going to be a really exciting battle for 3rd, and it's good to see different names in there. I think sometimes it can get a bit repetitive, obviously always seeing the same top names battling for the same position. I also think the 66ers this year, like last year, top 3 were literally separated on body weight. It's probably not going to come down as exciting as that, but it's still exciting to have some different names that we can see in a close battle for 3rd at least.
Yeah, I think I was going to say with Avery, I think he lags too far behind on bench to make up the difference for Shell, but I don't think Shell's going to come in as hot as he did for Sheffield. From his training, he's looking like around 750 to 755 shape. He doesn't look that strong in comparison, to be honest. And you're saying that you can just pull whatever he needs. His deadlift lockouts are pretty suspect, if I'm honest. Like, he got gifts at Sheffield. Those lockouts aren't convincing to me personally. And I think if he were to only get his opener, for instance, he's very much in a vulnerable position where Avery could give him a bit of a shock. So I'm not ruling anything out, but I would expect Shell to win, but I just don't think it'll be that comfortable like most people are saying. That, and obviously all of us think it's going to be closer than most people think. So I'd agree with you there. I was looking at a few of these other lifters, open powerliftings as well. Like I think Yusuke, he's nominated with 685.5, but his best total is actually 687.5, and Sean, like you said, his deadlift's 10 kilos higher than what is nominated, so I'm pretty confident that he'd end up being 3rd. The reason why I'm backing him more than the Santos guys, because there's just not as much reliable data from what I can see, and I can't really see any training footage from him either. The nominated total is considerably higher than anything you can see in open powerlifting as well. And I know not everything gets uploaded there, but when we can't see the footage, we can only go off what we can see, right? So based on that, I'd actually put Shell 1st, Avery 2nd, but not far behind, and then Yusuke in third.
I'm kind of glad you mentioned Shell's lockout there, because I've always thought, like, since he came back to Classic a couple of years ago now, I've always thought that about his deadlift. And Sheffield was kind of the first time he got called for it. Was it a second? I
Yeah.
think he got called for it, didn't he? And that's the first time I've seen him called for it. But I mean, I agree with you. I don't know if we're just really horrible refs, Manny, but I've always thought it looks a bit suspect as well. So yeah, that if he does get called for that, it will make it very interesting.
Do you not think it's just how he's built? Because he isn't built like your average powerlifter, and I think that doesn't do him any favors. But I guess when you're like actually on the platform looking at it, you will see it differently. But it's just because he's got so much muscle on such a small frame, it can just make it look like it's softer, where a lot of other people do look like they're hunched forward. And it's as well that kind of like instance where sometimes a lockout takes you by surprise, because it's like he's all of a sudden gone from just pulling to he's just there and he's stood up with it. And I'm sick of this thumb thing. I'm going to cut my thumb off. But like I think it is just that instance where sometimes people do have those deadlifts where just all of a sudden it's locked out and you don't see it coming. So in your mind, you're used to people like missing a deadlift on lockout because at that point they'd have still been soft. But for Shell, I think it is locked out. But it is down to the discretion of the ref, really.
Yeah, no, I do agree. And I'm sure it does look different in person. And it's one of those things where he has been around for so long that I think even if he does get called for it, it'll be the same thing as Sheffield. He'll just come out and make it more convincing on his third if he can. Like he won't let it shake him, which I think is an important note as well. Like he is very good on competition day. Like even if he's had a rough prep, I think we'll still see 745, 750 plus. I'd be surprised if we see less than that. I think he'll just somehow pull it together on the day. Right, I think I'm happy to move on to the 74s if you guys are.
Yeah.
Manny, do you have notes
I'm
for
just
this
going
one?
to work out a charge my phone.
Anyways, yeah, obviously this is foregone conclusion as for who's winning it. It's actually more interesting to talk about who's coming in second and third for podium. But obviously I've got a couple of notes for Perk anyway. So he squatted 315 for a triple in training, and it moved pretty well. So I'd imagine his top end is a decent amount higher than it was for Sheffield. It's just whether he feels the need to empty the tank or not. Haven't really seen too much bench footage of him. That is actually more maximal, but yeah, that's interesting. And deadlift is looking pretty good as well. Saw a pretty smooth 320 from him. That looked like he could potentially double it, maybe even triple it. So yeah, he's looking on form for a total PB, but it's whether he actually bothers doing that or just like cruises for the win. And then we have Chun Chaya from Chinese Taipei. We got quite a few more lifters in the nominations from that country this year, and quite a few of them are pretty strong and are decent threats. I think I saw an 805 total from him, a training total from him fairly recently, and I've seen like 785 in training as well. His bench is blowing up. His bench 222 and a half. Albeit the pause was kind of questionable, but it moved well. And he's also, and bear in mind his comp PB is 215, deadlifted 312 and a half, moved well. That's 2.5 over his comp PB as well. And he's squatted 250 and at an RP of 9, which is 5 kilo behind his PB. So he's looking like he should be able to total over 800. But obviously he's in that no man's land where you're not as good as Perk, but you're clear of the other athletes for sure. And then after that, it's pretty interesting because you've got a very tight spread between nominated third and seventh, all the way from 758 down to, in fact, even eighth. I think 758 down to 739, 730. They're all super close. So again, it just comes down to execution and experience. I'd back Josh Wright to come out on top out of all of those guys simply because he's got the biggest. I think he's got the biggest deadlift of them all, and he's been doing it for years. I'm confident that he could secure third.
Yeah, I pretty much mimic everything you've just said there. I think obviously Perk's quite comfortably in the lead. I'm also really intrigued to see what he does. So he's not doing World Games because I think his baby is due literally like within a couple of weeks of it. So he's going to miss World Games. And I wonder if he'll go all out at Worlds, because I mean he had a good meet at Sheffield, but I don't think he had the meet that a lot of people expected him to have. And I wonder if the unknown of what it's going to be like, obviously training and competing after having a child, is he going to think, actually, no, I'm going to go all out at Worlds and prove a point? Potentially. That's obviously what I hope happens. I think it would be fantastic to watch. And his training has looked really good. Like you said, Manny, like he's hit some massive squats and deadlifts. He's not shown tons of bench, but he's a big bencher anyway. Chun Chia from Chinese Taipei, I think he'll load a bench record. He might not go much above the 215. Did you say he hit 222 in training?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't need to go max out, does he? Like, he's pretty comfortably in second there, so maybe just chip the bench record in his second. And then, yeah, I think the battle for third is where it gets really close. There's a lot of lifters close together. I also said I back Joshua Wright from Germany. He's been around for so long. Like, he's a really good lifter, and I feel like he's due like a big meet. Like, and I think this could be it. Like, he's looked really strong in training, and like you said, he's got the bigger deadlift, so he can pull for position there.
Has Josh Wright ever podiumed at Worlds? Yeah, he has.
I believe he has, yeah.
Okay. I was going to say Clinton Lee might have had the edge from just having the experience being up there, but both of them have been there. I think that's the only real kind of like debate is which one of those two lifters is going to come there. But like, as Manny said, with the bigger pull, again, I'm always going to back the deadlifter. And I mean, just looking over his open powerlifting, Josh Wright is an incredibly consistent powerlifter. And at this point, with like how tight that battle is, it's going to be consistency that wins it. And I definitely back him to put himself in that position and secure the third place. And yeah, with second and first, it will be Chun Chia Fan and then Perk in first. There's not really much to say other than that.
Yeah, completely. I think we all agree there. Moving on to the 83s. I mean, I don't really have notes on this one apart from I can wing this one. So I don't know if one of you guys want to take the lead. If not, I'm quite happy to. There's a lot of familiar names here, and I think.
Has anybody got any hot takes on this one? Or is it
I was
just me?
gonna ask Sean, like, are you just gonna go off of the last episode you did with Joe, pretty much for this?
No, actually, I'm gonna go off my conversation with Carl Calais from Sweden. So I feel like I don't know if I back him for podium here, but I think he's going to put on a really big total, potentially not top 3, but I do think he will be very close to what they hit. And I think he said that when he hit that 805 before, he wasn't peaked. I mean, just chatting to him, he seems mentally in a really good spot. He looks healthy. He's not shown tons of numbers either. And I think he even said to me that, you know, he feels good when he's like a bit of a dark horse. Like he doesn't want that added pressure right now of, you know, he was a world champ in the 74s. He's coming up to the 83s. And I think he's had enough time out and off the world stage that people aren't really talking about him. So I don't know that I necessarily back him for podium, but I do think he will be up there close to podium. And obviously he's got a big deadlift. I mean, all these guys have big deadlifts, and actually look at the nominations, it doesn't look like he's got a massive deadlift, but we've not seen him pull as an 83 yet. But I don't think I have a particularly hot take. I think I do back, I don't know. I want to say I back Joe to win, but I do think Ade, the way his third deadlift moved at Sheffield, obviously he kind of fell over and off balance at the top, but I think he's going to load up for whatever he needs for the win. And I think it's a 50-50 chance whether or not he gets it. Like, I think he'll break the floor, and I think it will be fast whatever he loads. It's just whether or not he either holds on or keeps his balance at the top. But
Yeah. There's a lot of variables in this class. It's quite a difficult one to call, but I would say I'd back Joe to win it. However, a couple of key things can happen, which would mean Ade would win it. So I think if Ade subtotals 500 kilos or more, and if Joe literally misses anything, like it could be a third bench, even if he jumps up like 5 kilos, literally anything. If he misses anything, Ade will be able to do enough to take the win. But I think projected total, like top end for both of them, I'd say Ade's probably at like the 900 to 905 range, whereas Joe's probably more like 907 to 912 range from what I can see of their training. And I think Joe's just that bit too strong, whereby Joe would have set his total, and Ade has to pull for the win, and it might just be a little bit too much. But I'd say Joe first, Ade second, and then third is actually again quite interesting as well, because I think Enna's gonna load for podium. He's not gonna be able to load for the win. That's stupid. I'm sorry, Enna. Like he's posted some good squats. Like I've seen him squat 305. I've seen him actually bench 160. I saw a story of him loaded 175, but I don't know if he actually pressed it or not. But even if he did, if he were to pull 400 after that, then he'd put himself in contention. But I just don't know, man. I think he ends up missing his third pull, comes off podium, and then you have Tim, Durins, and potentially Calais ahead of him. But the third position, I put. You know, I'm gonna back our Brits, man. I'm gonna say Durins for third, because I've seen his 182.5, four on bench. And Durins, if you're listening to this, yeah, if you're benching 182.5 for 4 and you don't bench 200 on that platform, bro, I don't know what to say to you, man. Like you got to pattern up, because there's no way you're doing that and you're not benching 200. So you have to bench 200. You have to squat 320 plus, and at that point, if you pull like 365, 370, then you're properly in the mix. So yeah, I back him for third. In fact, depending on what Ade does, if he tries to pull for the win, Durins could even sneak into second. So yeah, I don't think he's got enough to win. I know he's playing to win, but I think it's everyone has their day. Joe, Ade, Durins.
Can you guys still hear me? My camera just crashed.
Yeah.
Just quickly adding on there, obviously you said about Durins. I feel like we're all underrating Durins here, myself included.
I haven't said anything yet.
Oh no, I know. I was
That's
going to say
you
from other people as well. Like when Joe speaks, like no one mentions Durins as a potential threat for that top spot. And looking at the numbers and Durin's general progression, I probably wouldn't rank him potentially winning either. But at the same time, he's not showing much, which to me means that his training's going really well. And I think he's still a contender to win. I just think people aren't really talking about it. But yeah, Charlie, what are your thoughts?
I mean, first of all, what you were mentioning with Carl about him getting close. What total actually gets you close to the podium at this point? Because it's got to be something ridiculous now.
I don't know at this point. You say it has to be something ridiculous. I think we're all thinking, win's going to be 900 plus, potentially second as well. But we saw what happened at Sheffield. I think it was a similar conversation there. They're going to be close to 900, and actually they were all not super far off, but they were pretty far off. So I think 850 plus potentially if these people don't have the best days. I think Joe's lifts are pretty clean, like across the board. His lifts are clean. Ade, I think they're mostly clean, but am I right in thinking occasionally he'll miss a squat on depth potentially, stuff like that. And then Durin's lifts are also clean, but if they miss a big jump, they're strong enough now, they need to be taking reasonably big jumps. So it's 1 or 2 missed lifts and they're in the mid to high 800s rather than 900 range.
Yeah.
I think personally, I think Podium's current world record and above, so 870.5.
Definitely. I mean, first of all, this is probably, let me just check the 93s to make sure if I'm going to be right about saying this. This is probably going to be the best session at Worlds. There's 6 or 7 names there that are just absolutely world class. So even before we get into the conversation who's going to win and who's going to come on podium, I'm really excited for this session. And it's the one that's definitely been on everybody's lips as well. And personally, I do want to back Ade. And I think that people have been given, Joe deserves credit. He is a brilliant lifter, but people don't put Ade in the conversation enough. And it's only really been happening recently that people have been acknowledging it more. But when you look at what Ade might have been capable of at Sheffield if he put the right numbers on the bar, I've always thought it was good for about an 880 there. People were saying Russ was miles away, but Russ hit everything. Ade missed his third squat, he missed his third bench. And it's if you shave a few kilos off those attempts and give him something that he'd hit, it put him in a much better position to actually total something big. And I think that him and Russ on the day were actually pretty similar in terms of where they were going to end. And I've always felt that he hasn't got the credit for that performance that he deserved, at least with the strength that he came in with. So I just had a quick peek now at what he did there and what I believe he could have done. And it was around the 880 mark. And adding 20 kilos from there in half a year isn't unfeasible. And that deadlift, as Sean said, it came off the floor and it got to lockout quite easily for 380. And if he can just balance at lockout, I think he's got what it takes to win in terms of pulling for the win. And if Joe misses, it makes Ade's day a lot easier. But I think the issue is, does Joe miss? Because looking at that flight in PA, he was the only person that I thought was lifting to standard. So I don't know about you two. I would like to hear it from you as refs. Just a quick tangent. Do we think that any of those 83s at PA Nats were squatting to depth? Just out of curiosity.
I'll be honest, I wasn't really paying attention to them that much. I didn't really watch it. I just watched the highlights. But from what I could see from, like, I don't know, I don't want to mention many names. From what I could see, most of them were borderline, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that. I think, again, I don't remember off the top of my head massively being like, oh, these are all really high, but I think it was the typical, would that pass at Worlds? Probably not, where Joe, they're undeniable every time.
Yeah. And that's the thing with Joe, is I do think he's an undeniable lifter. So it's like, I want to back Ade. I think the sensible part of me says Joe's probably going to win it. But again, it's like, if Ade gets that final pull right, I think he will be in the position to pull for the win. And if he can hold it, I do think it's going to be Ade's day. So I've got my fingers crossed for that. And in terms of the podium, it's really confusing because Enna went up to 93s for a bit. I think probably decided against it when he saw that they all started totaling like 900 plus all of a sudden. So we thought, nah, I can't pull there. So he's back in the mix. I'm in agreement. He's either going to pull for the win, which he won't. That would just be silly. And I know he's silly, but he's going to need something like 430 to be doing that at this point. So I think his aim will just to be get on the podium. Tim Monagatti, I've not seen too much from him recently, but I know that the meet that he did to qualify for, not qualify, sorry, but when he competed at Nats, the 845 looked really solid. And it'll be interesting to see how he's progressed. But Durins, I think, with how he's been looking recently, I'd back him for third. And I know he's looking for the win. I don't know if it will transpire that way. He is looking a lot stronger, but it's just whether that's enough to push those top two. But yeah, I'm probably going to go with Ade, Joe, Durins. That's my top three.
I like that you mentioned Tim as well, because I was going to say we've not really spoken about Tim, but actually there's no reason why he can't be as much in this conversation as Durins and Ade are. Like, we haven't seen it on the platform from him, but that's because he hasn't competed in, it must be close to a year now, like a good 8-9 months. I can't remember when New Zealand Nationals was. I think it was that he did, but 845.5 then was pretty comfortable, and he was still a light 83. So I'm sure he's filled the class at this point, and you know, he's cut before, he's got that experience, he's competed at enough international comps now. I wouldn't be surprised if he's also in that 860, 870 plus range with the others, obviously depending on who hits their attempts. My question to you both, so the total world record at the moment is Russ's at 870.5. How many 83s are going to end up above 870.5?
Three of them, podium.
Either is like 2, 3, or 4. I don't know. I think there's 4 people on that list capable of it, and that's the top 4 nominations.
Yeah, no, I agree there. I also think, I said this when I was on the podcast with Callie, like the top 8 in the 83s are going to be 800 plus most likely, which 2 years ago you were on the podium if you had 800.
Yeah, it's mad. I was also going to say, Sean, like off the back of that, I feel bad for Paul and Cathway because we haven't even mentioned them once, and they're only just shy of 800 on their nominated totals at 797.5, and they're obviously amazing world-class 83s as well. But the fact we're not even mentioning them now just shows the level of inflation, like how numb we all are. So, yeah, crazy.
No, I completely agree with that. And I also was going to say, like, I remember Cathway at Worlds last year, like, he looked so insanely strong, but I think it was, let me check out, yeah, deadlifts. I think he had some really severe cramping on deadlifts and he ended up like passing out after one of his pulls.
Yeah.
So if he can sort the cramping out as well, he hit 770 that day, but he had room. Like, I remember watching and thinking, God, he looks really strong. And when I saw his name in the nominations, I was like, he potentially is going to put a lot on that total as well. But because the 83s have just leveled up so much in the last year, they're not even being mentioned, which is crazy.
I don't know them, to be fair. I only know the top 6, but just with the numbers that they're putting up. Oh, no, I do know Paul. I'm not familiar with Cathway, but yeah, I think to have the top 8 all pushing 800, it is going to be an insane fight.
Yeah, 100%. Moving on to the 93s. Charlie, your coach is in this one. Do you want to take the lead?
Yeah. I mean, we saw what Christian did today.
Yeah.
Well, it was the other day. But what he's posted today with that 325. I don't even know where that's going to put him. But I think the conversation does have to just be between Jonathan, Emil, and Gustav. And last year, if I'm correct, it was kind of like a battle of who was executing the best and who was going 9 for 9. So it was a really tight battle. Literally to the end, it was Emil, it was Gustav, and it was Petrie, all hitting pretty much all their attempts, if I remember correctly. But this year, I think I backed Gustav again to come out with it. I think he's switched coach after Sheffield. He's working with, remind me of the name.
It's Joe Stanek, I think, isn't
Yeah,
it?
he's with Joe Stanek right now, and from what he's been posting, he's looking confident. I'm confident in him as well, and he's just been that lifter that's always turned up and always gets the job done. And I think the fact that he does have that slight advantage over Kaiko on the deadlift should give him the edge when it all comes down to it. Because I remember at Sheffield, he did look like he had a little bit more room on every single lift that he did, and I think he's going to have to use it at this comp. But if you want any lifter at all to be executing at their top end, I'd always want it to be Gustav. And yeah, I'd back him for first. I don't think Emil gets away with that deadlift again. If we're talking about shifty lockouts, I definitely wouldn't give him that at Sheffield. I remember I was sat next to Millie Mabbott, and she thought the second one was all right. I didn't. And she looked at me for the third one, and she said, yeah, that's definitely not getting given. And we saw the 2 white lights come up, and it just shocked me that that got given. It's still kind of beyond me how that was a good lift, but I don't think he's going to pull that off again. I think he will fall down probably into third. But yeah, I'd say it's going to be Gustav comes out on top. Jonathan Keitel will put in a very strong performance. But I just think that Gustav's going to pip him to it, and then Emil will come in third.
Yeah, I echo a lot of your thoughts, Charlie. I think it's going to be very tight for podium. I agree with you on that, but I think the order, I might have a bit of a different order. So I think Jonathan's the most consistent lifter I know. Like full stop. Like Gustav is pretty consistent, but if you actually look at their hit rates, Jonathan's higher. I back him to actually put together his true strength level, which would probably be over 920 by the time we get to Worlds. Gustav could as well, but I just think that Jonathan's got more on his deadlift as well. Like that 357.5. I remember him saying on I think it was King of the Lifts that just felt comfortable. Like he had at least like another 5 to 7.5 kilo there. So, and that bench is basically limitless. So yeah, he's my favorite to win for sure. I back Gustav for second. And then this is where it gets quite interesting, because initially when I was looking at these nominations, training and all of that, training footage and that whatnot, I thought Christian was in a bit of a no man's land between podium and the rest of the pack behind him. But looking at his training now, like obviously that 325 squat, that was a fatigue single as well, right, Charlie?
Yeah.
Yeah, after the 310 double, which was pretty comfy. his bench is looking stronger than I've ever seen it. Like usually he's fairly sub-max compared to where his top end is in training, and he's benched 2.5 pretty comfortably. So I'd imagine he'd be able to bench 212 or 215 in comp. And then deadlift, I haven't seen too much from him, but again, like from what I've seen, like he's moving 325 sub-maximally, and that would usually be kind of our opener weight. So that's
to be fair, his deadlift does look back all of a sudden, like it really looks on.
Yeah.
And he'll probably have a go at me for this, actually, for not giving him credit. But I do think that, like, if the top three slip, with how his training's been going, he does have that shot at getting onto the podium if somebody overextends and starts losing kilos. Because he's good for around that 900 mark.
Yeah.
And are all of these lifters like going to be able to secure like 920 plus totals? I don't actually know. And with where Christian's deadlift can be, he might be able to pull after, and that gives him the prerogative with where he wants to play. So it'll just be interesting to see if he can pull it off.
Yeah, for sure. I think 900 is there. I think 900 plus is even there. But if you think if he can squat 325 fatigue like that, he'd probably be able to replicate that after a cut, maybe slightly less. Let's just say 320 to be safe, maybe 212, or maybe even 215 bench, because the way his bench is looking, it's looking strong, and he could pull like 365 or more.
I think
he's definitely there, 900 plus.
The weird thing with Christian is, I don't know if you noticed this as well, but it always looks like he has to take a bit of time to get to speed on the platform. I know at Euros, I was messaging him the night before because I think our comps overlapped, and he was telling me that he was incredibly ill, and that did affect him. But it does seem as if he takes a little bit of time. Like his opener, you never think, okay, it's going well, but then by the time he gets to his third attempt, it looks smooth. So it's just like, does he get the confidence from his first couple of attempts to justify putting that on the bar? If he has that and he has a strong start to the day, then I can definitely see him pushing these numbers. But it's just about that kind of like execution on the first couple of attempts to kind of justify ending there. He's not going to like saying any of this. He's I'm going to have a bad voice now.
It's going to give you the worst accessories for like the next 6 months now.
To be fair, you just said exactly what I was going to say about Christian, though. And I think depending on who's handling him as well will come into play, because I think, like, let's say Matt's handling him. I think Matt at this point respects Christian enough as a coach and a lifter to know exactly what's there. So if Christian's opener doesn't move completely convincingly to what most coaches would say, if he then turned to Matt and said, no, I'm good for this jump, I think Matt would trust him on that. And I do think with his deadlift, he's not far. I mean, he has one of the biggest deadlifts in the group. And I think if Emil gets called on his second, for example, I think Emil will go up regardless, but I think that will give Christian the chance to slip in for third. I think I agree with you, Manny, that I think Kaiko will win. I think the bench record I just looked is currently 245.5. He did a pretty comfortable 252 at PA Nats. I think he'll take the bench record on his second, and I think he'll probably at least match what he did at Nats, possibly a bit more. And I think he's just so consistent. But again, like you kind of pointed out, Charlie, Gustav changing to Joe as his coach at Sheffield, I think there was a mishap with his third deadlift where Gustav actually wanted 365, I think, if I'm remembering rightly, where I think 360 was loaded instead because they thought that was enough. And then Emil pulled him. And I think Gustav had a bit of a chip on his shoulder after that. Like when I watched the interviews they did after, like he was very annoyed about it. And I think he'll want to obviously prove that he's the best. He'll want to win the world title again. So depending on the uptick in his training, I wouldn't be surprised if he wins. Like I'm really split with the nominations in this class. But my picks would be Kaiko, Gustav, and then I'm backing Christian for third because I think Emil will miss one or two, whether it's squat depth or deadlift. I think he'll potentially miss on one of those, if not both. And that will give Christian the room to total 900-ish, and that'll be enough.
Yeah, I'd agree. I was going to say, like, I think Christian will, as long as he covers Emil second on deads, like covers where his total is there, then he should be able to place third. I think Emil will overreach, try to go for the win, and fail to defend third from Christian, and Christian will just come in and sweep in. And and then Christian's still getting stronger, so this is him on an uptick. So if he's placed in third now, by the time we get around to next year, God willing, he stays healthy, then yeah, who knows where we'll end up next year. So it's very, very excited to see.
Also, Manny, you're the one that's good at maths here. What would 5% of the world record be in the 93s? So the world record total is 917.5 going into Worlds.
So you mean 95%?
Yeah, sorry, 95%, yeah.
Yeah, so 871 or 872.5 basically.
So I'm just thinking typically they take quite a lot of 93s to Sheffield. If Christian has essentially the perfect day, being a GB lifter as well, this could potentially be his into Sheffield if he's not too far behind the winning total.
Yeah, potentially. Well, yeah, I think it'd be interesting to actually do some calculations and see how much other lifters in other weight classes will exceed that world record, and how likely Christian would be to be selected.
Yeah, 100%. Even if he gets a reserve spot, like that would be a huge, like within the 93s to be at that level. But we'll see. Obviously, I think it could be similar to last year. Because am I right in thinking last year with the Sheffield invites, so many people obviously had such massive performances at Worlds, it didn't actually leave that many wildcard spots, I don't think. Right, move on to the 105s. So I'm really excited for the 105s. Do either of you want to take the lead on this one, or do you want me to?
Go for it.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, right. So ranked first, we've got Anthony McNaughton in first with 979, which I believe, so that was at PA Nats, and as a 105 lifter, he beat Dennis Cornelius's 120 record, which was like the big storyline of PA Nats. Like he came in, it was meant to be a battle between him and Keenan. Keenan is doing Worlds, so he was Waskar's replacement essentially. So he's ranked second in the 105s. They competed in separate flights at PA Nats, so everyone was quite excited to see. And I think Keenan was very confident going in that he would total something that Anthony couldn't get close to, which isn't what ended up happening. I can't remember exactly what happened with Keenan's day, but he didn't put up the total he thought he was going to. So Keenan's coming in ranked second with 958.5. And then we've got Anatoly in third with 940. A lot of familiar names in this class as well that I'm sure we'll cover in a sec. But I just want to shout out, obviously, Anthony, because, I mean, I'm putting him as the clear winner here. I wouldn't be surprised if he actually out-totals the 120s, depending on what ends up happening in the 120s. The fact that he broke Dennis Cornelius's record, obviously he hasn't officially broken anything because he's a different weight class and it was just a national comp, but his performance at PA Nats looked so insanely strong that I can see him doing 990-ish at Worlds, depending on how the travel affects him and how much PA Nats took out of him. And I think that makes him an easy contender for first. Keenan's spoken about 1,000 kilos before, but we're just yet to kind of see that on the platform. So I'm not really too sure, but my picks would be 1, 2, 3, exactly how it's ranked. Let me just have a look at my notes as well. So with Anatoly, I was just going to look at the records. What's the squat world record currently in the 105s? I think it's Ashton's from Sheffield, isn't it?
Yeah,
375. So I expect Anatoly to come in and break the squat world record, but I do think he'll probably come in third. And it feels really weird to say that when it's Anatoly. Like even with Ashton last year, everyone was like, "Oh no, Ashton's going to win," but it wasn't as clear cut as people thought. Like Anatoly wasn't too far behind. So yeah, they're my picks. I'm really excited to see what Coco does. He's ranked fourth with 920, which I think is just going to be a bit too far out to catch up to the podium. But he's been on an absolute tear, I think, over the last year, and he is looking strong. I don't know how much you guys follow his training, but it looks absolutely insane right now. And then we've got Emil Norling ranked fifth with 912.5. I can't remember Emil's best total, but he's not been close to it for a while. I want to say it's like 930, 940-ish.
928.5.
928.5. So Emil's done that before, but it's been a while since he's been at that strength. He's been posting more training. I think it looks like he's training a bit more consistently now and obviously focusing more on his powerlifting and everything again. But I think he's a bit too far behind as well for that podium, especially when we used to always say that Emil was the one with the crazy deadlift. But actually, there's 3 guys ranked above him with bigger deadlifts at this point.
Yeah, I'd echo your thoughts there, Sean. I think Anthony's clear, like proper clear. I don't think he doesn't necessarily need to completely empty the tank here. Like he can replicate the performance he did at PA Nats and be just fine. I'd then say Keenan second, and then third, yeah, Anatoly. But then I think I'm actually more in. I think that's kind of like almost set in stone because of Keenan's deadlift, right? I think with Keenan should be able to fairly comfortably hit 955 plus, maybe even 960 as a total. And then Anatoly in third. But then after that, you got about 3 or 4 guys who are going to be hanging about that 915 to 930 range, all like duking it out. And I reckon Sanchez will just like sit back, cool, calm, and collected, and then just load what he needs to like beat all of them and potentially hit like 925 plus or 930. Because if Sanchez were to squat, let's say for instance, he was to squat like 310, bench around the 190 plus mark or more, like set him up with like a 500, as long as he subtotals like 500 or more, similar to like Ade, what I was saying with Ade, then he could literally load up like 420. I think he could pull 420, but based on that 405 that he did at super training, as long as he gets a bit more on bench, maybe a tiny bit more on squat, he could actually end up ahead of a lot of these guys. But he's very similar strength level to Walter, who's also a big deadlifter. And you got Regin as well, Emil, they're all big pullers all around the 380 range. But because Sanchez is so far ahead, he can literally just see what's happened, assess the landscape, and yeah, bang, this is what I'm doing.
So I have a
The
question
issue,
with this.
wait, sorry. The issue with Sanchez is he might be B-flight. He's
That
nominated
was
in
what I
ninth.
was going to say.
So I don't know if you guys watched Chalk Talk. Oh no, I don't think it was on Chalk Talk. But I trained with Sanchez last week, and he told me there's been an update from Eurosport, and they're taking the top 9 lifters in the 105s. So apparently he's going to be an A flight. But that's what I'm just going off what he said anyway. But,
Yeah.
If he isn't, it would be a massive shame because that was his total at British as well, wasn't it? And was that his total at British? No, it wasn't. But he was close to 900 at British. Like, had he got his third pull at British, which was controversial, I think I did the maths earlier, and he would have been at that, I think would have given him like 901.
Yeah.
And his pull at Super Train, like you said, Manny, was unbelievable. Like, there was room. I personally am never convinced by his lockout. But again, it's one of those things, like, I've not been in the ref seat for his deadlift, so I can't say for sure. But he got it when he got the world record before, and it always looks the same. He's very consistent with it. So if he's in the prime time session, then I wouldn't be surprised if he just loads up. I don't even know. He'll have choice of placing when he'll probably just go for the deadlift world record, I'd imagine. And top 5, I'd imagine, will be a big goal as well, just for team points.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really have much to add on this class. I think it's one of those ones, again, where we're probably looking at the nominations reflecting what's really going to happen. And I think that it is going to be Corrington, Emil. I mean, we've not really spoken much about Regan, to be honest, and then possibly Sanchez with that deadlift competing for those 4th and 5th spots. But I do think that the top 3 are settled. Anthony looks so comfortable at PA Nats, and again, like Joe, he's pretty undeniable. I can't really see like any issues with standards coming in with him. So I think he's clear in first. I think Keenan, because of his honeymoon plans, is going to be angling for a spot going to Sheffield. But yeah, past that, I think it is really just going to be 1, 2, 3 in the way that it's put down.
I think it's similar to the other class where we said, like, I think it was the 83s we said about it. Like, there's so many familiar names in this top 9 rankings. Like you said, Charlie, we haven't even mentioned Regan, who I think, is he still a junior this year? If not, he's like first
He's
year.
last year junior.
Last year as a junior, he's totaling 903.5 as a 105, and he's probably going to be way above. Like, I think he hit a big squat PB the other day. I've seen him benching like 230 in training, like it's nothing. Like, he's another favorite, like at least top 5. But there's so many big names in this class for this year that we're not even giving the time to these guys who are insanely strong as well.
Yeah, it's interesting with Regan because he did that comp he did his last comp as a light 120 at 110.6 and totaled 925.5. And usually I wouldn't even take note of that. I'd be like, oh yeah, that's a weight class above. He can't replicate that. But because he's so young, like, I could see he's felt that weight before, and the way that juniors progress, he could very well replicate that, like in the time that's passed. Like I've seen him squat 340, like you said, Sean, he squatted 340 in training. The depth was a bit questionable from the front, but even if he knocks like 5 kilos off of that and can hit that, like that puts him in a really good position. And Mill's training is looking excellent. Like I don't think I've seen him look this strong for a while. I think he was saying like he can't remember the last time he's hit like squat PBs like this, like 300 for 6. 325 for 6 on deads. Like he's looking pretty strong as well. So yeah, it'll be an interesting one to watch. And another one I wanted to mention actually is Vladimir, the Swiss bench. I think he holds the world record bench at the minute. His bench is looking very good, but I think he had an adductor injury recently, so he's still recovering on squats and deads. His dead's still looking fairly strong, like pretty much almost back to 100%. But his squat still has some time to catch up. I think he's recently hit, like I think this was like 6 days ago, he hit like a 220 for 3 on squat, and his best squat is 305. So it's just a question of how much of that gap can he regain before comp, and whether he gets it back over 300, I don't know. Maybe it'll be like 285 mark, but his bench is looking strong anyway, so that's another thing to consider.
Something else I've just noticed as well, I didn't realize the world record total in the 105s is, I was about to say only, but it's not only, 940.5. So we're looking at the podium all being above that world record as well.
Yeah.
Like probably quite comfortably, which is crazy. But I'm really excited to see what Anatoly does. As much as I don't think he'll move above third, I think he will come in third. He doesn't show tons of his training. Like I think normally he shows more than he has been, or unless I've just not been seeing it. But I'd love to see like a decent total increase from him and see what happens there. Because I think the last few meets he's done, his squat's been there, his bench has been there, but his deadlift hasn't quite been at his full capability. So if he can pull those all together, then I think his best pull's like 355. I'm going to check that before.
I think it's around there, yeah. And then he's just had a lot of difficult meets with it since, and it let him down a lot last year at Worlds.
Yeah, so if he finds that 355 deadlift, his nominated total is already at that 955. So really, it could even be closer with Keenan than we think. I don't want to say Keenan's been inconsistent because I think that doesn't really say anything fair. Like I think he's been more consistent than I think. But I think because he's always been such close battles with like Ashton and Bob when they were in like USAPL together, I think I don't know about you guys and how closely you followed that all, but I'm always expecting him to be like 960, 970, 980 plus in the way he talks.
Yeah.
And we're yet to see that. And I don't know if he's just saying those numbers just for like a false confidence thing, or if he is capable of them and we just haven't seen that meet yet. So that's something I'm also really interested for.
I think he's capable of those numbers. I don't think he's just talking out of his arse. I just think that he's had a lot of life factors happen. Like he's had certain injuries that have popped up. He literally just got married just after PA Nats as well. So all of those things factoring in mean that he's not performing at quite the level he is capable of. But I still think it's too soon after PA Nats for us to see a performance which is reflective of where he believes he's at. And I don't think it's enough to challenge Anthony. Interesting that you mentioned that the total world record is 940.5, Sean, because like we were mentioning about Christian in the 93s, depending on other classes, where their world records are and how people perform will determine how many people go to Sheffield. But if you actually look at the nominated totals in the 105s, the top 8 are above 95%, because 95% of 940.5 is 893.5. And it's only literally top 8, so all the way from Anthony to I think it's Vladimir with 896.5, and even Sanchez as well. If you count his final deadlift from British, he'd be at 901 instead of 882.5. So you could have a lot of 105s potentially qualifying for Sheffield as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's going to be so interesting to see. I think moving on to the 120s, if you guys are ready.
Always ready for the 120s.
I will say, I'll let one of you take the lead on this one because I didn't realise that Jonah has like a default total of 75 as well. And I mean, he's a name that I think last year especially was really talked about in this class. I'm sure, Manny, you probably noticed that better than I did.
Yeah. I've taken a couple of notes from Jonah as well.
Should I take the lead on this one?
Yeah, can do. So for the 120s, we have Nonzo out in front on nominations with a 965 kilo total, which he achieved at Euros just gone a couple months ago, and his training is looking excellent. Like he's hit what 350 squat in training, 212 bench, and a 405 dead, which look comfortable. So his training total is already 2.5 kilo over his nominated. So he's already in a position where he could potentially break the world record total and secure himself a spot at Sheffield. And I think he should be able to do that. I don't see any reason why not. His training is clean nowadays. He squats the depth. He generally lifts the standard. So yeah, really excited to see what he does there. And as for the rest of the podium, we have Etienne nominated in second, and then Dev nominated in third. Now, of these two, I think it's going to be closer than what is shown on the nominations, just because I know Dev was dealing with quite a few personal issues going into PA Nats, but thankfully his newborn is doing a lot better now. His training is a lot more regular, and he's looking healthier and stronger. So that 945.5 is probably on the low end, and I could see him being a big threat to Etienne. I think Etienne's top end strength is looking higher out of the two of them, but I just think his execution just isn't quite there. Like his deadlifts don't look super convincing to me. Like as strong as they are, like he had to retake his world record attempt last year, 396, and if he's having to do stuff like that again, and he gets the vast majority of his kilos from deadlift, I think Dev will end up giving him a bit of a shock and sneaking in. But then we also have a couple of other lifters who are really good as well, like Joseph McDonald from Trinidad. He's a lot stronger now. Like I've seen him squat 340 in training. He's benched 260 in training, albeit not quite to the full pauses that he's going to get at Worlds, but still very strong and a very comfy 350. So I know I don't know if you guys watch Powerlifting Nation on YouTube, but I think he did a predictions video on the 120s and said that he's predicting Joseph in fifth. And ever since, like Joseph's just had like a massive hate boner for this guy, and just like every video will mention like, oh yeah, fifth place, yeah, I'm gonna come and collect my fifth place. So I think he really wants to prove a point, and he very well could, but I don't know whether he's gonna get a bit blindsided and let that deter him from actually maximizing his total, because he's quite inexperienced compared to a lot of these other guys as well. Like we've got Mo as well from the UK. Shout out Mo. His training's from what I've seen of his training, and he's not posting a lot, he's looking strong. But this was a while ago when he did his 330 triple on squat, and he hasn't posted anything for a little bit, and I think that means that he's cooking something a lot more than we think. Like his interview with Joe Whiteley the other day, he was saying that he's aiming for a 400 kilo deadlift, and as long as he locks it out properly, like he could be a big threat as well for podium. But if I were to give my final predictions for podium, I'd say Nonzo first, Dev second, and then I would say it's quite hard, man. But I would back Mo for third. I'd back Mo for third.
What are your thoughts, Charlie?
I think Nonso wins it. He's already out ahead in his training since Euros. Has looked very good. I think you can tell when he's feeling strong, especially on his deadlifts, because it's like going into Nats, you almost had like a suspicion. I think, did we watch it together, Sean? I think so. That was after.
Yeah,
we were there. Yeah, we were there on the 120s, and I think we both knew, like, you can tell when his deadlifts are kind of off, and then similarly you can tell when he's firing. And right now, everything that he's touching seems to just be going ridiculously well. So when you've got somebody that has like a really strong subtotal already, especially for a deadlifter, and you just stack a 400 plus deadlift on top of that, it's really hard to see him not coming away with first, especially with like the goals he's got with going to Sheffield after this comp. I know that's one of the things that he wants to get from this year. So yeah, Nonso's coming first. After that, it does get a little bit tricky because there's loads of lifters that all have different strengths. You've got Dev, who's just an absolutely huge bencher, and then just has a solid squat and deadlift. You've got Joe McDonald, who he's a subtotal specialist, falls behind a tiny bit on the deadlift, but when he's pulling like 366 still, it's hard to say that it's too rough. And then you've got Mo and Etienne, who will be pulling last out of that group of people. And it's really just going to come down to those third deadlifts that people are executing. And I think for me, I would go with Nonso, Etienne. I've struggled to call that third place, to be honest. I do want to give it to Mo because I haven't seen much of his training, but everything that I have seen of him, he's been doing well. And the fact that he basically got given one bench at Nats and he's still nominated quite close to that third position, I think we need to bear that in mind with that total. I think he should be good to pull into third once all the dust settles with everybody else.
I feel like at this point, if anyone's listened to all of the preview shows, they're going to think I just hate Nonso. I agree with you, Charlie, that when he's on, he's on. And I think I can't remember what preview show it was. There was one last year, it might have been British. I remember thinking he kind of looked like his training just wasn't quite as on as normal. And I agree that recently he's definitely looked on. I don't know. Obviously, his 405 was smooth, but it didn't look super easy. For 405, it looked easy.
It is 405. It is 405.
I know. But this is where my argument of, is that too close to Worlds to really need to pull that much? Has he almost shot himself in the foot going? Because that's only a block out from Worlds, right? Like 4 weeks out, roughly.
I was speaking to him at juniors, and he kind of, because he fell short twice, didn't he? It was at Junior Worlds he went for the heaviest pull in the IPF, and then at the British he was pulling to win. And he had acknowledged like 2 flaws in what he did. I think he said leading into Junior Worlds, he just pushed too hard. And then leading into the British, from that, he actually pulled it back and he felt like he pulled it back too much and he just hadn't put enough gas in the tank from that pull to set him up to pull what he needed on the day. So I think like if he's learned his lesson there, which from that conversation I think he has, I imagine he's spoken with his coach and decided that was the right call to do at that point out so that he's set up well to go into Worlds. And with all the stuff that he's been doing afterwards, it doesn't look like it slowed him down. And I think we need to use that as context. So, like, whilst I agree with you, like 405 is a crazy number to load in training. And as a deadlifter, and I mean, I'm nothing near him, but loading anything close to my top end never seems to go well. Like the next week, I will just die. But from that and from everything that I've seen afterwards, I feel very confident in him to get the job done, despite your very valid point of like he does sometimes push it and then maybe it holds him back as a result.
Yeah, I think that's all important context, to be fair. And I do genuinely hope it pays off. And I would like nothing more than to see him win. I think it would be a really cool, like, especially after you said, like, he had a couple meets last year that just didn't quite go as well as he wanted them to, right? I think there's a lot of pressure on him last year. He might not have felt it. He might have, in that, you know, he was the up and coming 120. He was still a junior. He was still a teenager. It was like a big storyline. And I think, you know, he absolutely has the potential to win this. And if all 3 lifts are there, there's a good chance he will. I personally am backing Dev for the win. I think, like you said, Manny, he had a lot of personal stuff going on. He wasn't really training regularly going into PA Nats. 945.5 is not indicative of what he can actually do. Like his best, he did a 317 squat at PA Nats. His best squat from Raleigh last year, which is almost a year ago, was 340. So that's already a big chunk off his total. He did match his best ever deadlift at PA Nats just under at 365. He's pulled 370 before. His third his third bench at Nationals was pretty comfortable. He benched a relatively comfortable 265 in training the other day, as comfortable as a 265 bench can look. I think if Dev turns up and all 3 lifts are there, I do think he could win this. I think it might be a case of Nonso then pulling for the win and overreaching. It just depends if his deadlift is there. But obviously, Nonzo's going to have the final say. Like, he's got the biggest pull by far. Like, he will come out, pull him for position, and it just depends as well if it's too unrealistic to go for first. Is he just going to pull for second and secure that for team points? Like, we don't really know. I think other notes I wanted to make. So Mohamed Sahad from Algeria, I think he's likely to load up a squat world record. I think the record at the moment, Dennis Cornelius at, 386. And Mohamed has squatted 382.5 before. I think he's going to load up squat world record, so that'd be really cool to see. I think Mo from GB, I think 930 isn't truly what he's capable of. I think he's capable of more. And he's someone else that I'm kind of waiting to see him have like an amazing meet. And like you said, Manny, he's posted a big squat and then went silent. So that to me means training's probably going really well. So my picks for podium, I'm going to put Dev, Nonso, and then I think it's going to be Etienne, but I would like to see it be Mo.
Yeah, I think as well. I'll hate myself if I don't mention Jonah. He'll be lifting in the B group because he's got a default nominated total of 75, but his training is again looking very sub-max, but very, very strong. Like, he squatted 320 for a single, and it looked like an RP7. 250 looked like an RP8 on bench. The pause was mid, but the guy can bench a house regardless, and he posted a very sub-maximal deadlift of 300, like deadlift signal of 300, which is probably like a 6, and it was pretty easy. So I could see him posting around his total PB of like 925 to the 930 mark. He could probably chip his PB even, and he has the advantage of being in his home country because he's German, so no travel, well, minimal travel for him. I don't know where he lives relative to Chemnitz, but yeah, he'll be able to set a total that the others are going to have to try and beat potentially for those like 4th and 5th spots. Also worth mentioning that Bo's probably going to be lifting in the B group as well. So Bo is a British lifter, but he is now lifting for Israel, and he is nominated with a 900.5 kilo total. I think he recently lifted at Euros as well, but he was hanging around like the late 800s for a couple of probably like 2-3 years. He finally had his like 900 plus meet at Israeli Nationals. So it'll be good to watch him and see if he can replicate that 900 plus performance again.
Someone else I think worth mentioning as well, currently ranked 7th, Bryce Krawczyk from Canada. I can't remember when he was last at Worlds, but obviously he's a big name in the sport, like big name as a coach, but also as a lifter, big deadlifter as well. Like, he's always been known for his deadlift. And I was watching some of his YouTube vlogs recently, and I know he did say he wants to like aim for like a 400 pull. I don't know how realistic that is. I think he's been dealing with injuries for a few years now, but I think he's healthy right now, or at least they've found a way for him to train and get the most out of it. So I don't think he'll be podium, but I think he'll be another lifter that puts up a big total in that A flight as well. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he deadlifts, because we've got a lot of guys here that could potentially break the world record.
Yeah, I think I saw a 352.5 pull from Bryce, and it was honestly like so easy. I don't think I've ever seen him move it that easily before in my life. Like, less than an opener, way less than an opener. He looks like he could open on like a 360 or 365 pull and take big jumps from there. So I don't think he's being hyperbolic when he says he's aiming for a 400 kilo pull. I think he probably has like a 50-50 chance of getting it, but obviously a safe bet would probably be something more like the 390 to 395 range, just to make sure like he maximizes his total. But yeah, be cool to see him load it up.
One last question for this class. So do we think Dennis Cornelius's total world record is finally going to be broken by one of the 120s? It's 978.5 for reference. Yes,
it's going to be broken. It's going to be broken for sure. I think Nonzo will aim to chip it. There's no point in obliterating it, unless it comes down to a thing of pride and seeing what Anthony McNaughton totals, and they might be like, oh, actually, we can't have the 105s totaling out totaling us. Don't get clapped by 105 all over again in 2025. They might want to do that. I might even go one better and say that Nonzo potentially loads up, or I don't know if he's aware of this actually, whether you listen to this or not, I don't know, but even though the world record deadlift is 411, as in the super heavies and the biggest deadlift in the IPF, the biggest deadlift in any IPF affiliate is 417.5. And I think that was done by, I've forgotten his name now. I think it's Mikhail Kuklayev or someone like that. But basically, he might try and load up to beat that even. So the heaviest of all time, like natty and like or tested on a stiff bar, etc., etc. So, yeah.
I mean, with that deadlift record, that would only happen if Nonso had already won by second attempt. I think like the aim for him is to win this and get into Sheffield for definite. And then in terms of breaking that record, again, it's like if it needs to be broken, I don't think there's room for pride here with how the battle could go down. So if they push each other past it, they'll go past it. But it's like, first of all, you're hurting your chances for Sheffield if you start pushing yourself past it, which is always has to be like considered in the conversation. I don't think Anthony McNaughton's going to try and go past like too far past the 105 record because he's the favourite for that competition as well.
Yeah.
So does it get chipped? Possibly. I think there's a lot of people there capable of it, but it's whether it needs to happen. And I think people load what they need to win the battle, not for accolades that can be taken at another opportunity.
Yeah, that is a good point. Actually, that's a good point. But I just think that, mate, I just think genuinely Nonzo's deadlift is in a spot where he can afford to load up. Like, sorry, Chad, I think he is considerably stronger than Dev on top end. I think he's at least 15, 20 kilos ahead of what Dev can do. And I think that's covered in his second to third deads. And I think he's genuinely going to be at a point where he can be like, okay, I can just load what I need now, what I want genuinely. That 405, I think he's got like a 420 top end. Genuinely, like I could tell. And it scales differently when your deadlift is that strong. Like when you're in the 400s, like even something even moving at like an RP of 9, you still probably got like another 12, 15 kilos, and that moved easier than that. Like it'll be a shame to not see it, basically. And it also depends on what the 105s do, because if Sanchez loads something stupid, Nonzo's probably going to want to load more, and it depends on whether Matt allows him to or not. So
it's the GB coaches, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't think GB coaches would allow that to happen unless everything else had already settled.
Yeah,
is the caveat.
Which I think it would have. I think he's strong enough whereby everything else would have settled. But we'll see when it comes along. But I think he's strong enough where he's secured it by seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you said there, like the GB coaches obviously will, I mean, they're going to have the final say of what they put in. I think if Nonzo's having like a 7 for 9 day, or like by the time his deadlift opener gets there, 7 for 9 day, or just 6 for 6 on his subtotal, and Devin's missed a bench or a squat or both, same with Etienne and anyone else that's like seemingly pretty close, he could potentially secure the win in his second pull and then load up whatever he wants for that third. But I think, I'm assuming Matt Gary's going to be taking the lead. I think it's going to be obviously play it safe, get himself in a position that he just pulls for the win. And if it's a conservative pull, it's a conservative pull. It'd be great to see Nonso win. I have a feeling it'll be Dev, but obviously we'll just see. But it'll be really exciting either way.
Yeah.
Charlie, do you want to take the 120 plus, seeing as you are technically a 120 plus right now?
Good boy.
I'm not right now.
I'm a 120 plus right now. You're not.
I think the big question in the 120s is, does Tema make the podium? Because it's like Jesus is maybe looking close to the strongest that he's ever been. If he can lock out that deadlift, then he might have a shot at breaking his own world record. But the big thing that I'm curious about is, do AJ and Cenk Kocak have it in them to beat Tema, and does Tema have it in him to place above them? Now, I will admit I've not seen a lot of either AJ's or Cenk's training recently. I have seen Tema's, and he is slowly getting back to his strength, but he doesn't look like he's all there. I think he did 390. I feel like Manny will know it's for like 7 sets of 1 he's finally cut down the 100 sets of volume work that he's been doing recently. But he looks like he's getting back there, but I haven't seen a lot of his bench and I haven't seen a lot of his squat. And I don't know if he's hiding the training that, in his case, he might not be so satisfied with. So, yeah, I think that's the big thing that I'm looking for in this class is, does Tema actually make it onto the podium, and are there people there that are strong enough to push him off even though he's not coming in with his best day? Now what I think, I was able to think about it earlier, I think he's strong enough for third, because Cenk was at Euros recently and he went from a really secure first place to actually losing the battle to, does anybody know that he was a Scandinavian lifter, but he actually ended up losing that battle. So I don't think that Cenk comes on the podium. I think AJ's got the strength to take Tema, especially considering that he did miss his final pull at the British, and there should be some room there. But I think the podium will read Jesus, AJ, and then Tema in third.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, mate. I think Jesus is obviously clear. His training is looking incredible. I think he might be able to attempt to chip his own world record as well. Based on the 460 that he posted in training, that single was pretty smooth. So I reckon he'll be able to chip his own world record. Still a bit of a way off Ray's unofficial world record of 490. But bench again should be round PB territory. The only thing I'm concerned about is obviously his deadlift. He just has a bit of an issue with those lockouts, but it's not enough of an issue to knock off 1,000 kilos. So he's way ahead of everyone else. I'd agree and back AJ for second as well. I think Timo's strong, but I just don't think he's strong enough to be convincingly over 1,000 to keep AJ at bay. Because I think I'd put Timo on like a maybe like a 390 squat. We haven't seen his bench at all, so then I can only really hazard a guess of like a 230 bench, 620. Well, what's that like 720 sub, and then what will he pull? He's obviously pulled those 390s. That was for 6.5 singles, so 6 singles and then half a rep. Yeah, he probably go over, but not. I think AJ's looking strong, man. Like, I think that 380 squat that he did in training is telling me that he can squat like 900 pounds on the platform. Bench, you haven't seen much from him though, unfortunately, but I'd back him to be well over 230. And his deadlift's looking strong as well. His deadlift looking like he could probably load up like 370-ish, maybe just under. So I'd back him to beat Timor, especially if Timor makes any silly mistakes, not necessarily used to his new levers, all of that stuff. And then third place, I would put Timor in third, ahead of Cenk, because Cenk's execution isn't the best from what I've seen. His last total was a fair way behind his best ever total. So his nominated total is 985. His best is 1018. And I know with supers, like one lift can make a big difference in total, but just generally from what I've seen from Cenk, like his deadlifts can be very ropey and like very much hit or miss, like deadlift roulette situation. So yeah, I'd say my final podium would be Jesus first, AJ second, Timor third.
Yeah,
And,
I completely mirror that.
Yeah.
What were you going to say after that?
I was just going to shout out Paul Kirkby Richards because he's a legend, and yeah, I don't want him to think that we've forgotten him because yeah,
right, he's on my list to shout out
yeah,
as well.
yeah.
Watching him compete at Euros was just so much fun. Like he was just enjoying being there, and like from what he posts and stuff, like he genuinely is just enjoying the process. I think I'm expecting to see him in the top 5. I feel like he is very consistent. Peach is his coach, isn't he? And he's going to be there, I'm assuming, as well. And I think, yeah, he's a reliable lifter. He's consistent. And he's still so new that I wouldn't be surprised if he's put a good chunk on his total. I'm assuming you've seen his squats in Pure Gym, I think, or the gym group, where the bar is just whippy as hell. And he's still squatting like, was it 365? I think he posted yesterday. Like it's nothing, even with the whippiest bar in the world. Like he's looking really strong. So I'd back him, Paul, for at least top 5, which is second international, first worlds would be insane. I think Jesus is comfortably winning, but with the deadlift, I'm intrigued to see what happens. So he pulled, was it 425 he pulled, didn't he? He didn't hold on to it at the top, but obviously we know that is a problem he has. But I'm wondering if they've gone with the strategy of, okay, well, let's like overload your deadlift almost. No, you're not going to lock it out, but then surely he'll be capable of locking out a 412 or 411.5, whatever the record will be. If he's got the strength for 425 and just can't quite hold it, knock off a good few kilos, potentially he'll then lock that out, because the problem is he's been doing longer holds on a lot of his heavy singles, hasn't he? And I think he thinks they're locked, but his knees soften, don't they, as he locks it out and holds it. So I think that'll be interesting to see, but I think he's comfortably going to win. His squats looked very good in train, like really, really good. I think I agree there. AJ second, he's looking strong, and I think he's consistent enough. And I think Tima, he's such an unknown, because was it Euros? He was supposed to compete at Euros, but I think he got injured in the warm-up room because he weighed in, and then I think they were warming up for squats and he stopped, and he didn't then come out at all during the meet. But his body weight was 132.6, and I know at one point he was going to cut down to the 120s, and I'm assuming he's maybe decided against it, or just taking a bit of a break from that cut before he goes down fully. But previously, when he hit his best totals of like 1,087, he was weighing 160, so 30 kilos of body weight nearly got lost, and it's going to take a hit on his strength. So it'll be interesting to see what he does. But I think he'll still come third. He's looking strong enough for third, I think. But I don't know, it could kind of go either way there. And yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to see how many of these guys as well close in on that 1,000 kilo total. I think that's all my notes on the men's side. I don't know if there's anything else you guys want to shout out.
No, nothing else from me.
Nothing either.
No. All right. Well, we'll wrap up the men's preview show there. So if you've made it to the end, thank you for listening, and thank you both for joining me as well.
Thanks for having me.